Cheng-Chow, who for many years was chair of the department in the School of Music at Northwestern University, and now is a professor of piano and department chair at Eastman School in Rochester, New York. We're very happy to have you here, Alan. It's been a long time since I've seen you. Alan Chow has won many, many prizes for the Concert Artists Guild, for international competition, the UCLA International Piano Competition, and the Palm Beach Invitational International Piano Competition. He is a Steinway artist. He has performed in recital and concert with orchestras in nearly all of the 50 states. He tours Asia regularly as a recitalist. He has given master classes throughout North America and Asia at conservatories, universities, and summer festivals, including Indiana University, Bowdoin Music Festival, New Orleans International Piano Festival, Gina Bachauer International Piano Festival, and many more. Welcome, Alan. We have 5 students who will be playing today. The first will be Alina Liu, and she will be playing the sonata number 8 in C minor, opus 13 of Beethoven, the 3rd movement, the rondo movement. Second will be Riker Zimmerman, who will play the 1st movement of the Mendelssohn Concerto in G minor. Next will be Eric Wong, who will play sonata of the 1st movement of the Mozart Sonata in A minor, K310. After that, Edie Park will play the 1st movement of the Haydn Sonata, Hoboken 1652 in E flat major, and we will finish with Micah Chan, who will play the Etude, opus 10, number 3 of Chopin. So we will begin with Alina.
All right. Really well done. And I like the facility. I like the spirit of the way that you play the piece. How long have you been working on it?
I played it like a year ago, and then I took a break from it, and then I picked it back up like a month ago.
Okay. And you play the other movements of the sonata?
I actually haven't.
Ah, so the other two movements, which are maybe more famous, are coming up soon for you.
Yeah.
All right, good. Well, the kinds of things that I'm going to ask you to think about are really just building on what you already do, since it's all very well done. I think sometimes when we look at dynamic markings, they tell us, the amount of sound, but then we have to make decisions about the kind of sound that we want to make with that. And I think that your tonal variety is really, the sound basically is really good. I think we could just have more variety of it. So there may be things that we can do with articulation. You'll notice in your score, and if you have a reprint of the same edition I have, that a lot of times eighth notes are marked with slurs, and then other times they're marked without slurs. And I think that's a deliberate kind of articulation. I mean, you can look at curves, those slurs, at various points in music history, and they could be either phrase markings, they could be groupings, but I think they're almost always legato markings. So if I see a slur, it's legato. If I don't see a slur, then that gives me maybe the option of doing something different with it. And I think in this particular case, it can change the character of the music if the left hand has different kinds of articulation. Your tendency is to play them all kind of legato. So maybe we can explore a little bit of that. The other thing I think about Beethoven's markings, I mean, if you've ever looked at any of his manuscripts, they were just, you could hardly read them. He was always changing his mind. He was constantly readjusting things. And the placement of dynamics is very specific to Beethoven. And he writes them almost structurally, almost architecturally, so that if I see a forte at that particular moment, that's got to be a moment. And oftentimes you kind of go to the dynamics, you kind of lead into it a little bit, and I think that can be more surprising and a little bit more shocking. And also then it can tell us a little bit more about your phrase structure and where we're going with it. So at the very beginning he says piano, and you have that three-note pickup, which is kind of, how would you describe the character that you're looking for?
I think it's very spirited.
Uh-huh.
And it's passionate and like light.
Yeah, light, yeah. I mean, if he'd written,
I don't know, could have some mystery.
yes, exactly. And I think when you played it, it's very smooth and very easy. But I think underneath the soft dynamic, there's this sort of sense of urgency, a little bit of sense of unease, unsettled kind of quality. So your staccatos, rather than being light, and this to this, then on to this, and then. Let me try it again. So it's a little bit more breathless, I would say. And then. Yes, and can you do it a little less bright? Good. Yes, so that harmony. Do you know what that chord is? You probably haven't had a lot of theory yet. It's a diminished seventh chord, which is the most intense harmony that Beethoven has. So anytime you see a diminished seventh, there, and then the resolution of it, and then. So I think even though there's no dynamic marking, that's the highest pitch. And then. So that's one large idea. And then you have kind of a variation of it, a reinforcement of this and then. Now, there's no dynamic change, but the writing seems to indicate you have an octave here and then. And what I was talking about is in the slur, the first passage you have all slurred, but but then no slurs, and then we go back to the slurs. And then bum. So I want to be able to hear those kind of character changes, just based on the articulation that you're choosing to use. Okay, so we're going to try from the beginning again. The opening was good, and when you get to and then, maybe a little bit more sound, and resolve it here, and cadence. And open, and this, and one, and two, and more, good, that's nice. And even here, he writes off of the beat, which is much more exciting. He could have done. Right, so use that energy. And then. Can we try that?
Just the left hand?
Yeah, sure. That's good. And if you can sort of do it in one gesture, one, then, and then, good. Yeah, it's hard to make the change right on this. At this point. That's a good one. That's it. Good. Now with your right hand, and then. Yes. Now you made that two different phrases, which was nice. And then this one, and then boom, boom, boom. But he actually starts with a long crescendo, and then he says 1, 2, 3, 4 bars of crescendo to a forte. So actually, it's all one phrase, and then. So that makes a much more exciting kind of feeling. You have this, and this, and then, now, and then, right? So I want to get that sense of excitement. That's the first forte we have in the phrase. One more time from. Start. And now continue, and 1, 2, and then. And 1, and 2. That's really nicely done. That was good. And when you have this surprising, and then you have the second, I think the first one has a little bit more intensity because it's going to the minor. And when you have the second one, it's a little bit of a different coloring. So if I have a minor, and then major, right, it has a little bit more of a sweeter quality. So when you play this, a little bit more in the key. So when you have this phrase, 1, 2, a little bit sweeter for the major quality. And then 1 and 2, 1, 2. Good. So when a composer writes dolce, sweet. So what do we do to make it sweeter?
We could have a lighter touch.
A lighter touch, yeah. I think your right hand is doing well with the lighter touch. I think maybe the left hand's a little bit on the heavy side. And if you play both hands equally, the left hand's always going to be heavier. This is just the nature of our instrument. So maybe thinking not too heavy. And then when you that's a very common thing that Beethoven does. He crescendo and then what? Subito piano, right? So I want to be able to hear that change of character. You have a major, then back to minor, right? And then boom. So I want to be able to hear all of those different changes. He loved surprises, and so you want to make sure that comes across. One more time from one, and then minor, and now crescendo, and. Yes, good. So the crescendo, had to come right back on it. You kind of waited, and then you pull back, but it's right on the downbeat. And then boom, boom. Now, when I see a sforzando, how do you know how loud to play a sforzando?
Like based on the dynamic.
Exactly. So if you have a sforzando and the context here is piano,
Probably
not big, yeah. And then you have a second sforzando. Perhaps you might think a little bit more. In the first and the second, then boom, boom. That's a possibility. But it was a little bit, and then boom, boom, maybe a little bit too loud for that context. From the crescendo. Measure 30. Is that a good place to start? Oops. Good. I like this a little bit more this time around. The first time I wondered if it got a little bit on the fast side. And I don't think there are really any fast notes. There's no passage work, it's all melody. So if you think of the melodies being a little bit fast, that's one thing, but I want to be able to hear every note as a melody. And right? So it's kind of got a little squeeze. So think about each note being very even, one, and then, and sing each note. That's better. Good. And then two. That's nice and done. Good. It's a new story, so I think, or a new part of the story. I think you maybe want to take a little breath. And try that. Maybe from. Crescendo, and then subito piano. So we think we're going to go and boom, right? But he says this and then. And so he's delaying what will eventually be the big climax. So it's, again, a kind of a surprise that we want to set up for us. Can we take it from here? Crescendo and then good. That's good. And again, you have to be careful. Your hands are in a dialogue. they're having a conversation. So the left hand passes it to the right, left, right. And then. So sometimes I hear your right hand playing kind of melodically and your left hand is playing rhythmically. So equally melodic. One and then. Let's hear that duet. Yeah, you could take it from here if you like. That's it. But soft. That's it. Good. So when a composer writes the same material, same melodic stuff in different registers, different color, and it's naturally inherent to the instrument itself. So if you think about this upper register, there's a clarity to it. It's a darker sound. It's maybe more mysterious. So this is more pleasant. But then, and not only that, he gives you a sforzando on the last note. Here, and then. So it's a little bit more exciting. It's a little bit more intense. This. It's just sort of a pleasant kind of thing. But when you get to lower register, I want to hear you change the character with the color of your sound. Now darker, and more accent, then crescendo, and that's good. Now, what are those notes? It's a big leap. I think when composers write big leaps, they're not trying to make it hard. I think they're just saying, I want you to take more time. So don't be in a hurry to, one and then. It has more impact, actually, if it's a little bit later. Could we try that? What's a good, sure. So now, let's see again. Do you look at the note before you play it? If you see the note, you're going to play it correctly. So you want to make sure that as you're playing the last maybe 2 patterns, you don't have to look at these notes, they're already in your hands. You're just looking and really aim for that F. All right. Now, you don't have to look at your left hand. Why don't you have to look at your left hand? Because it's right next door. So if you're playing this, all you have to do is slide. So then you can concentrate on your right hand. And then, right? Let's try that again.
I should start.
Sure, you can start a little earlier. Okay, so that's a good kind of practice tool. Now, this is a rondo, and we're coming back to the rondo theme. The next melody that we have is in the key of A-flat major, which for all composers is a warm key, and the register that he writes is right in the middle. So there's something very gentle, and it's got long notes, lots of slurs, so very legato, and you notice that the slur goes for 2 bars. So sometimes when you play, I'm hearing every, but if you can make it, try that, very smooth and the conversation. Oh, is that right? It's a comment. So I just wanted to be more gentle. I think it was a little bit kind of rhythmic and angular. So just as smooth as you can make it. So if I think smooth sounds, smooth fingers. Right? Let's try that. So close to the keys. That's better. That's good. That's the end of that phrase. And then we have something new there. So don't be afraid to take a breath. Right? So just take a little bit of time. Can you? Yeah. Nice. So if I think about staccatos in piano, it's a light kind of thing, but now I see staccatos in forte. And also the fact that the piano staccatos are major. But the forte ones are minor. So I think you can play it with a little bit heavier kind of feeling. So when your left hand lighter, and then as you crescendo, you can get a little heavier. And when the right hand takes over, it's a little bit more brilliant in the sound. So, 3 different kinds of staccatos basically. Can we try that? Light. Now it's crescendo, and now brilliant. No hurry. That's good. You forgot the lower octave. That's right. And that makes it obviously for a bigger climax. Okay, thank you. So in this passage, how many registers do we go through? Right. What do we do with those registers? Yeah. And it's really hard in the lower register to be soft. So I think your fingers don't want to go all the way to the bottom of the key. Then a little bit deeper into the key. And then, so we hear 3 distinct sort of orchestrations, right? Different colors. And composers write in those registers, to create that character change. Can we try it? So, very quiet. Mysterious. Another lift. And then 1. Help us find those step ladders. Do the G and the B and the D and then he gives you 3 of those Fs to really reinforce that. One more time for that. To the B and D, then F, F, F. Good. Okay, good. And a lot of this is similar after this point. So in a rondo kind of structure, that rondo theme comes back and forth, but the alternating parts are where you can really give different kinds of character. So I would, maybe take a closer look at the way he writes the dynamics. Really be cautious of the places where he writes in the articulations, whether staccato or legato. And then anytime a composer writes in different registers, it's asking for a different kind of sonority, a different orchestral kind of sound. So just make sure you follow those kinds of things, and it really adds a lot of variety to playing then. Okay? All right, thank you very much. Mendelssohn next. Very nicely done. Do you play the whole concerto, or have you just started working on this first movement? Okay, terrific. I think you play it with really good speed and good clarity. I think what I would like maybe to have a little bit more sound. I mean, you have to imagine that you'll be playing with an orchestra, and they make a lot of noise. So you want to make sure that you are kind of in an equal dialogue with them. So they come in with their yum bum 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 bum, and then the yum bum 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 yum bum bum bum. You're taking over from the orchestra. And in those the earlier classic period concertos, they had very long orchestral introductions. So this is actually kind of surprising that the pianist comes in this soon. And so it's like, the orchestra starts and they said, I'm here. And so when you start, I want to have that feeling of that. Can you show me that? And so sometimes what you do is you lighten up on the shorter eighth notes. You go bum 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 bum. Can you keep the sound all the way? All the way. That's good. Don't work too hard. Yeah, that's good. So it should feel easy. Good. I don't play the rest of it. That's all I can demonstrate. Okay, keep going. Yeah, I think I wouldn't maybe have so much pedal. Boom, 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 boom. I think you could keep it sort of light. Boom, 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 boom. Yes, and part of the reason I wanted that is I wanted to hear the clarity. As soon as you put the pedal down, I start to lose all those inside notes. So you can practice it without the pedal, and then you can touch with the pedal, but I think it was a little bit too long when you had it before. Can you try it so it's a little bit more brilliant? Good, and then T-on. I know it's a two-note slur, and we always play the second one softer, but if you do, it sounds like you've given up. And T-on, T-on, T-on. That's it. And then. Dynamically, he says mezzo forte. I think it's a different kind of, I don't think it, that sounds a little bit too martial. Maybe the mezzo forte, and then he says con fo, sorry, so I would use that mezzo forte to be a change of character as well as the softer playing. Can you do the second one? And change. And now. Good. All right. So now one and then bum bum and bum. And then, ba-dum-bum. Can you have a little bit more length of sound? And then, bum-bum. It's kind of rhythmic when you do that. Can you, I would maybe follow through with the arm a little bit more. One, and then, bum-bum. And then. So you have a little bit more length of sound. Otherwise, kind of stops the sound. And then, good. Nicely done. Now your left hand. That's actually kind of a nice melody. To this, and then to this, and then go all to this. So I think I would group it. One, and then, sorry, and then, So 1 and 2, 1 and 2, and. Can you try that? And then, and bum, 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 and then, bum, 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 and 1, 2, 1, 2, and then 1, 2. Good. When a composer writes all those changes of direction, you know, it's actually quite exciting. He could have, I don't know what he would have written, something like that. But I think it could have a little bit more finger clarity. Can you try with a little bit more brilliance in your fingertips? Good. That's really well done. I don't know that I would get so loud so soon. He has the sforzando piano, another sforzando, and then he writes crescendo. So maybe the little inflections, this, and now from here, boom, 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 boom. Then I would use that to build a crescendo. Yeah, maybe not quite so bright there, right? I think we're in the context of piano, aren't we? Yep, we're in piano. So it's not going to be as loud as some of the accents that we're going to do over here when we're in forte. That's right. That's good. And this is another interesting thing that he's doing rhythmically. And a lot of composers will do this when they're trying to build climaxes. When you have this part here, you're basically in half notes. The impulse is 2 to a bar. 1, 2, 1, 2. Then he moves to quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then what he does here is 8s. So he's escalating the rhythmic intensity of it while you're playing all the same basic note values, which is kind of a cool trick. So what I'd like you to do is feel that escalation of intensity. Go to the half bars, then every beat, and then every half beat. So boom, 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 so that you don't really have to do almost anything. The music carries us with that excitement. Can we try that? So 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, bum, bum, and then. That's good. And I think, especially when you get to the bum, and then. You can take more time. You're by yourself, the orchestra's not going to worry about it. And it's just the most, and then, and then, bum, bum. And then the orchestra takes over from there. Okay, so there used to be this sense of the classic period, the concerto, the soloist and the orchestra. It was a kind of a conversational relationship between the soloist and the orchestra. By the time you get into the Romantic period and later concertos, it's almost adversarial. Do you know what I mean? Where they're at odds with each other. So they're battling against each other. So the character of your playing here, I think, is that you feel like you should be taking over. And so you have to have a little bit more strength of sound, a little bit more strength of character through the sections. Okay? All right, so let's go into our next section with the scales. Yes, so this is very good. Could we make it not sound like their scales? So if I were saying that, like a cold wind, so I don't want to hear all the notes. Can you give me a gesture? I don't know what those notes are. Can you give me more of a swell, legato? It's almost like an effect. It's a good scale, but I think it's more of a musical one. Can we try that feeling? Use your pedal, kind of a right, and the next one, then the next one, it's interesting the way that Mendelssohn writes this. He writes double forte everywhere, and he's just telling us, there are exciting moments. This is an arrival. He says brillante, and then here you have a double forte, and then another double forte, and then another double forte at the end. I think he's saying, let's play double forte. So I think you have to have a little bit more brilliance in your right hand. Because your left hand is on the beat, I think that you're playing your left hand almost louder. Can you try it one time without pedal, and maybe play your left hand mezzo forte, forte-ish, and then really bring your right hand more. That's better. Good. And so that also you see accent. On those notes. You don't want to play them just sort of like rhythmic. You can actually lead, and then to this, and then to this. And that gives you the accent, but it also makes the inside notes more interesting, and they give more momentum. One, and then do this, and then two, and then. Can we try that again? As you did it before with your pedal if you like, but. And then two, and now this, and good. Now, you're shaping it exactly as he writes with the little hairpins to this and but the sound is a little bit on the vertical side. What I mean that is that they sound like they have accents. And I think it's physically you're kind of dropping on every one of those. That's actually what we want, in the sense that you're dropping arm weight on each note. But you want to do it in a way that is one big gesture, not separate gestures on each one. So if you can use your wrist and you have that change of key, and then there's something very sweet. He writes tranquillo, and then he writes dolce. So let's try to see if you can get a nice phrase, sing as you were doing, but not with accents. Let's see what that feels like. Better. Color. Good. When a composer writes dolce, of course, we had the minor, which is a darker feeling than when you have the dolce. I think you would maybe want a sweeter sound, and maybe that means more tops. Can we try that feeling? So we have the major, minor, and then back to your sort of a solo voice at that point, right? Let's try that. That's good. I think you could even make a sweeter sound when you. So I probably wouldn't crescendo. All of these have hairpins. These don't have hairpins, so maybe you could stay softer. Why do you think he writes espressivo there? Yeah. Well, I always think, aren't we always playing expressively? So when he says play expressively, I think more expressively. We could do something different. I think it could be a couple of things. One, you could take more time. I think it's an indication maybe of rubato. It could also be, a different kind of sound quality. So if I'm playing, so I got even sweeter. Or I could do the opposite. And then you lead into your octaves there. I think it can work either way. It's your story. You're the one telling us. So you can decide how you want to do it. But I think it's an indication that something different should happen at that point. So I always think composers are trying to speak to us. They're telling us, do something here. So can I ask you to do the minor? And let's see what you come up with. Yes, good. So twice, that was nicely done. Twice now we have in octaves. And then now we have hairpins on those two, but now this, no hairpins. So I think it's more personal, or more internal. This is more extroverted and more, again, the second time. And then now, and then he says crescendo, and then something quite different. So there's a lot of characterizations that are happening, and you can achieve that with your colors, with dynamics, and with articulation. So I'm going to ask you to play around with that. Use your imagination here. Maybe from your octave melody with the beautiful octave sound and singing, not hard, easy, no crescendo. Now sweet. Good. You know, we don't really think about dissonances. We don't hear notes. What am I trying to say? This. All of those are non-harmonic tones. And in the classic period, and Mendelssohn kind of straddles the classical period and the romantic period, those were considered dissonances. I mean, these days, our music is so dissonant already that we don't hear that as a dissonance. But in those days, those would have been more espressivo. This and this and then. So if we play, we're not actually taking into account how they would have heard it. So if you play, so I'm going to ask you to lean into it with a little bit of timing. And then, and you could even practice it. To get that inflection. Then, can we try that?
We have 2 minutes.
Okay. And sweet. So if we go into the key too fast, it's actually kind of accented. But if you slow it down, that's better. And then to this, and then and one, yes, good. Whenever you have diatonic, when I mean diatonic scale things, but then you have chromatic. Chromatics are always more intense. So if I hear there's a little bit more intensity, more drive through the chromatic ones, and it gives a little bit more energy to the top. Otherwise, it's kind of nice, but I want to hear that chromaticism, and that means something to the composers of that time. Can you try that? So darken those chromaticism at the end of the phrase. And then and then and one. And then 1, 2, and right, good. And of course, the orchestra has your melody that you've just been presenting to us, and you're the decoration on top of it. So you want to make sure that in your playing of it, I heard a little bit of a heaviness to it. I think it could just be lighter. and you're just sort of this free improvisation on top of the orchestra. So probably the right hand could have a little bit more brightness to it, a little bit more articulation, and the left hand could be lighter, so it doesn't get too heavy. All right, I know we don't have any time left. I want to have you do, can you show me that figure? Yes, good. And there's something about that figure. Then the orchestra, and then, sorry, there's something more intense about that. The orchestra comes in it says fortissimo each time the orchestra comes in. I think you have to have a little bit more breathlessness. And then, sorry, and then, can we try that? To the very end. Again, you want to make sure it's a very virtuosic concerto. And you're the soloist, and it's meant to be brilliant. This last thing was technically very good. I think I could have a little bit more brilliance. So you're playing and then, can you do a little bit more finger? Can you try that passage with a little bit? Good. That's excellent. Bum, bum, bum. The octaves going down. Where are they? Can you give me a little bit more drive? Can you show me that? Right, that's the idea. Okay, so I know we don't have very much time today, but I think you played very well. And what I would look for is a little bit more, again, thinking about qualities of sound, all the changes of character. That's sort of one of the things that Mendelssohn was famous for, were these changes of characters, this fantasy kind of feeling to it. And every gesture, the way that he writes it, either with dynamics or with the harmonies or the figuration itself, is a way of changing characters. So just sort of give us a little bit more of that. Okay? All right. Thank you. Very nice job. I like the energy. I like the tempo, actually, quite a bit. It's a good allegro tempo, and Mozart says allegro and then what? Maestoso. What does that mean?
Majestic.
Yeah, and so would that affect the allegro in any way?
I think it would be like a little slower, like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little more held back, and so. Yo, bum, 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 bum. I think that you started off kind of at a good tempo, and then it got a little bit faster in certain places. And I think, especially for this particular piece, I think I would like to keep it a little bit more steady, in general for classic period music anyway. But also the use of pedal. I mean, you know, the pedal was a pretty new invention for Mozart. He grew up playing harpsichord. So when you think about the way they would use pedal, it's not the way that we use it, which is basically harmony. And I think that if you use too much pedal, we kind of lose the intensity of the and that dissonance for him that's a really bold and striking sort of sound. So for my ear, sometimes, at least in the back of the hall, this is a really live hall here, you might want to use either a thinner layer of pedal, meaning, you know, don't push it all the way down, and or see how much you can play without the pedal, and then just add pedal for certain resonant touches, you know. I think that it's like the string player, in the orchestra. I think it would be, or even woodwinds of some kind of grouping. Can we try it? So it's a little bit drier, but it has a sort of a angularity to it. Yum, bum, ba-dum, bum, yum, bum, ba-dum. That's better. Good. That from my ear. So one bean, ba-dum, bean. That's a very bright piano, so you want to make sure that it doesn't have that kind of an edge to it. So if you relax your arm when you go in try that sound. I keep doing doing every note. I know. So see if you connect those a little bit more, maybe. And a one. Good. So it's a piano, of course. Again, we talked about the non-harmonic tones under He could have done then back to that more maestoso martial kind of feeling to it. But that could the staccatos be not athletic, but more and so it's a slightly longer staccato. Nice. And then 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 1. Yes. So that's the one change that we have, right? I mean, there's a variation. I think we could color it differently. You don't have to do anything too dramatic. 1, 2. But I think we want to acknowledge that change of harmony at that point. And it's a major quality, so that's unexpected as well. Yes. Now, that was soft, but it was not a penetrating sound melodically. So make sure that as you get softer, you still have firm fingertips. And every note speaks. From the yes, even there, it's melody. It's an odd melody because it's syncopated. But still melody nonetheless. Okay, good. That was better. I kind of like maybe not too much pedal, because when we hear, it starts to sound kind of harmonic. And there's something exciting about that Alberti bass. So I think maybe a little less pedal. Can we try that? And the piano. Good. Then. Good. All right, so now. Which hand is more important? That's how it sounds. I wonder if maybe they're equally important, but the right hand is actually, it's the harmony. And then, so I think we could have a little bit more right hand, and it's more brilliant. Just a little bit more. Good, and then now, something completely different. So what do you think is the character here?
I think it's like a little more calm, but still like not like happy.
Okay, yeah, I don't think it's completely happy. Do you know the occasion for his writing this sonata, or what?
It was like near like when his mom died.
Exactly. And so there's a sense of crying out, a sense of despair, and then when you and then it's not, not that kind of happy, but there's a sense that it was maybe it's a bittersweet kind of moment, but there is something about that. 1, 2, 3, and then. So what I'm thinking is that sometimes your sound is a little too light, that we can't really hear his melody. And then, boom, boom, boom. If you think of what your outline is doing, and then to this, and then to this, and then to this. So following that, 1, 2, and then, sorry, 1, and then to this, then to this. Can we try that sense of direction? To this, and then to this, and to this, and then, and bum, 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 and yes, I think it's interesting that he writes slurs over these. And then no slurs here. I think that could be a change of character. And I think the reason why he does the slurs at that point, again, they're non-harmonic tones. He would have written but he does this. Every beat is a dissonance. And so the slur maybe indicates something a little bit more legato, more singing. Then when you get to, then you can change the color of those. And then it gives a little bit of a different character to it as well. But listen for this, and sometimes we just have to practice really slowly. If you think about it, you got an upper neighbor and a lower neighbor. Upper, lower, upper, all right? So each of those is a distance. So we don't want to just sail through it. And you can because your fingers are really good. But let's hear it more melodically. 2, 1, 2, 1, and then 2, 1, and then to this, and then. Good. Nice. 1, 2. Yes, but that. You can have a little bit more liveliness on that. It's a cadence, right? And right on that. 1, 2, 3, and then 2, and then 1, 2, and then 1, 2, and 1, and then 2, 3, and then 1. That's good. I think that was really quite nicely characterful. And I also like the way that you're shaping things, and I think your teachers maybe already asked you to do this because you're doing it so well, is that basically if lines go down, we kind of diminuendo. If they're going up, we would crescendo. On an instrument that didn't have a lot of dynamic contrast, I mean the forte piano is relatively new for Mozart, the composers would often write dynamics with the musical direction. So it kind of makes sense that if we have and then to and then, that we would just sort of go with the musical direction of the line. So that was nicely done. I wonder this little closing theme that we have. Bum ba-dum, bum ba-dum, bum ba-dum, bum ba-dum. You have 2 bars of it, and then you have another 2 bars of it, and it's in a different register. So I wouldn't maybe get that loud here. Bum ba-dum, bum ba-dum, bum ba-dum, bum ba-dum, bum ba-dum. And so like you have strings and woodwinds, and then maybe here the trumpets are coming in. So there's a little bit more brilliance in that register change, I think is what he's asking us to think about. Can we try that? Yes. And then one. It's good. Okay, so again, I would think maybe whenever I see rests in classic period music, I really think it means silence. And when you get into the romantic period, we often pedal through rests. But here, I think it's pretty clear when he wants you to release. So that, one, off, then he gives you, a whole note, right? But you kind of held this, and then you did the. They sound exactly the same. One, off, then, and all the way to that, right? That's good. Okay, so Mozart's very clear. He says fortissimo for 4 bars, pianissimo 4 bars, fortissimo 4 bars, and so forth. So the dynamic contrast is good, but what's the character change that goes along with the dynamics?
The pianissimo becomes a little more like mellowish.
Okay. What if it were more nervous? And so that the more angular, more military, and then when you'll I don't think it should be relaxed, actually. It's an intensity, but it's just quiet intensity. But if it's it doesn't seem to be the right character here. And I would be careful balance-wise. I always try to do that as legato as I can with my hands so that I don't use too much pedal. It just really gets muddied. And I think that what he was looking for was the clarity of that in an exciting way. Let's try that without that much pedal and maybe balancing a little so that it's not quite so heavy on this instrument. Very good. And the back. That was excellent. I know it's very tricky, technically, to shift, and you do that well. One and ba-dum, off and then off and then Sometimes I'm not getting that release. One off and then boom boom, and then boom boom, boom 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 boom. That breath is a rhythmic element. The silence is part of the music. One, and then boom, boom, off, and then boom, boom. Can we try that? And then boom, boom, off, and then beat-on, and then beat-on. Yes, that seems a little passive, your left hand. And then beat-on, and ba-dum. And then I think especially that leap of the octave is an important kind of rhythmic element. So one off and then beat-on and ba-bum beat-on and ba. Can we try that?
Just one.
You can do both hands, but just and ba-dum beat-on and then beat-on and then beat-on. Good. And then recap. One, and then. I don't know that that's just a scale. It's a melody, right? So it's a melody that starts from here, and then. So just make sure you really sing, and come back home there. Okay, good. And a lot of this is similar, right, to the end. I want to do just the last part of it. Can we do... is that bar 116? Oh, you don't have bar numbers. Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 off long, then bom, bom, Yes, good. Technically, I think the piece should have ended there. But he extends the phrase, and then, diminished seventh. You know, it's the most intense harmony that Mozart has there. And not only does he give you one of them, he gives you two of them. And that, and then, boom, boom. It's such a brilliant kind of writing. So it's almost cadenza-like. You could take a little, and then, and then now that's the end of the piece. With that closing theme. Can we try it from 121? Good. 2, 3, 4, and 1. And then we think we can finish. And surprise, and another surprise, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, and 2. Another party orchestra, and right. You know, I like the rolls at the end. I mean, that seems stylistic. And so you can maybe be a little more orchestral if you think about it. Boom, boom, two down bows in the orchestra. So it takes a little bit of time to grab the bow again. Again, I think that when you think about the harmonies, when you think about the kind of writing he does, there's a lot of information he's telling us as regards to character and to emotion. And then once you figure out what you think that means, then you have to translate that into sound, because that's how we communicate. We don't tell people what we think the music is about. We guide them with our sounds. So the greater the variety of sounds that you have, the more kinds of articulation you have, that can help create lots of different characters, which then, of course, gives you more specific kinds of ideas as you go through it. But it's very, very well done. It's a big piece, and you play it quite well. All right. Thank you. Okay.
It's here.
Back. Thank you. you very much for playing that. So how long have you been working on this piece?
I first started like a year ago, and then I brought it back recently.
Okay, terrific. Well, I think you have a good feel for the piece. I find it in here. There we go. I think you could even do more with the contrast that Haydn writes in. Excuse me. I don't know if you've played other Haydn sonatas. Which ones do you?
Number 35, I think, and also number 50.
Okay. And, well, 50 is sort of in the same grouping as this one. But this one is the biggest of the sonatas that Haydn wrote for the forte piano. And he had traveled to London and come in contact with forte pianos which were bigger than the ones that he was using in Austria. And it had capabilities, well, it was a larger keyboard, it had bigger sound, and so he was using lots of different dynamic markings that he doesn't normally use in other earlier sonatas. Plus the textures of the chords themselves, I mean, 6 or 7 notes. And what that is implying, of course, is that he's wanting more sound, he wants more power. And so I think we could play that up a little bit more, and then when you have single note kind of gesture, then that texture is quite different, and the characterization of it. And of course, when you have the second theme, and that kind of lightness and transparency, then you can sort of contrast that against the full orchestra. And again here. I think you've understood that. Your teacher wrote echo, and I think that can work, right? That it's a variation, and then so you can make the most of it. He loved. Apparently, he had a good sense of humor, and so they're kind of like jokes written into it. The surprise changes. I think you want to make more of the surprises, and let everyone in on the joke itself. All right, so can we start from the beginning? And the dotted rhythm, I think, has kind of more authoritative feel. So can you then, and then, two, and then, and then, and then. Really boldly rhythmic. And, good, and then, and. Yes, I'd be careful of the rest. And then, and then. Good, okay. So it's true that in some editions we have the slurs and then another slur, but in almost every other edition there are no slurs after that. So I don't know. I mean, you could kind of continue the legato if you like, and you're using 2 hands, and that makes it easier. I don't know if it needs it. I kind of like the change of character that might imply. Smooth, and then, bum, and then. Can we try something? You don't have to try doing that, but maybe not so gluey when you do it with the 2 hands. Yeah, it's good. And then they're brighter, and then they get a little bit lighter, the staccatos. Yes, good. I don't know that we have to. He writes piano here. I think it maybe it's a flourish all the way, and then that would be more of a sudden change. To this, then good. So the melody's where? Where's the melody? Right hand, left hand? Kind of both, exactly. So I'd like to be able to. But I'm not getting as much in the right hand as I am in the left hand. Can you really make sure that we hear? So especially the top notes there. Good. And in your right hand, this figure. I think I would use that as more linear. One, then two, this, and then do this, and then, and then you have the two, then good. It's good. So the first time, and then I think you did the opposite. And I wonder if this scale, and then the release, then one, two, and then. It's much more involved to do that. And so maybe that would be bigger. So it's like ha ha ha, you know, and then two, and. Can we try that? Good. Okay, good. So a couple of things in that passage. When we have one sforzando, a second, and then often people do a third. I think that each one of those sforzandos could get a little bit more intense. So the first one, now the second, and then the third, and then it leads us into the next gesture, which is very virtuoso. And then. Can we try that? So 1, 2, and first, second, yes, good. And the first one, I think maybe not so big. It's just a sforzando in piano, so not so big. Then, that's good. Now a little bit more, now, and then. Good. Now, when you have 2, 3, and then. I'm not hearing your sort of melodic aspect to those 30 seconds. They sound very. 1, and then. You think of it always as a melody. I think fast notes are just fast melody notes, right? So never like scales. 1, and then. Try that. Good. So if we have this harmony, and this to this, I think that's the most important harmony. So you have 5, 2, 1, 5, 1, and then 2, and you have that rising scale up to it, and then. So let's shape it that 1, 2. And now this, good, and that's nicely done. I like that. And why did you change the color on the triplets? You did something nice there. Yeah. I think anytime a composer writes a triplet in the middle of a duple, kind of meter. It's an espressivo device, or improvisatory. So it doesn't have to be. Sometimes I hear people just play it very rhythmically. But can we try that? And then, nice. And then, good. And there's something, what's the character of this second theme here? Playful. And what makes it sound playful? He gets that effect. Yeah, with the little grace notes. I think, what else does he do to get that? Dynamic. Piano, the dynamic, certainly. And also the register. You know, it's higher. So I would accentuate that by and then having a little bit more sparkle on top. Good. That's the idea. And there's a common phrase construction in the classic period with two shorts and a long. And it was just sort of, this is the first short, the second short, and then now long. So it's kind of a phrase construction, but it also gives more direction to the music. So it's all the same rhythm, but you can shape a little bit more differently. Can we try that? So to this, then to this, and now all the way and first, second, now long, and then and then that's good. That's very well done. 1, 2, and then 2, and then 2. The octaves seem very important. Yum, bum, 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 bum. They're not going to be, heavy, but they want to be a little weightier in sound. And sometimes it felt a little bit yum, bum, 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 too light. Yum, bum, 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 bum. And that change of length is a really good way to change the character of it. Can we try that now? 1 and then. Yes, one more time. Sometimes I want to hear melody. That's it. And then, boom, boom, boom. Good. So we have this. There's something, fun about that D flat to D natural. D flat start. Then, so I think you can change the articulation. Maybe I'm staying a little bit more legato. And then I brighten up the fingers to make it show the major. And then 2, that's it. And 1, 2. Yes, no slurs. And then. I think I would keep it crisp. And boom, 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 boom. You're kind of sliding into it. Can you keep the same length, short, and boom, 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 boom. Good. Good. Again, he only wrote the staccatos for the first pattern. And then there's no articulation after that. Now, you could say, okay, he wanted something different. Or you could say that he said, I'm asking you to do staccato. Now you know what to do. You can decide, but if you use a more legato touch, I wouldn't do it with the pedal. It's not a way that they would have used the pedal in those days. So not likely. So especially when you have chords changing every quarter, every 16th. So as much legato as you can do with your fingers, but I'm not sure that I would use the foot quite so much. That's pretty good. Now that was a nice legato. If I were to say, that your balance could be better, what would I be asking for? More tops, yeah. So just make sure that you have that kind of balance. Can you show me that? Yes. So whenever you have chords, in one hand, in two hands, you always have to think about the balance of it. So just making sure that we get a clear melody. And one more time, and then we'll keep going. And better and yes, now I'm not sure I would get slower because the surprise is the silence that's coming up next. So keep it, we don't expect it to stop. We stop. And mystery. And then boom, beat on, and boom. So it's almost orchestral in that effect. One more time. Yes, from beat, and make sure you don't accent the release. Loud, soft, and loud. 3, 4, 2, then 1, and boom, 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 and 1. Yes, and then that slur really isn't written in. You have the right idea though, because it's a 5-1-5-1, and typically we would want that kind of inflection. But I think I would do it dynamically, and then, rather than right. He doesn't write slurs, so I would kind of keep it separated. Can you try that? And then beat-um. Yes, and beat-um. Could be a little later. And then, and boom. Boom, and boom. Good. Good, so we're going from B flat major. And now we have, I don't know if you had, in theory, that would be an augmented 6th chord, but that's a very unusual chord, and then we land G major, completely unexpected. And that G major is going to set up C major here. So if you can, when you play this, that's the normal chord because you just finished B flat, and so you play this, and then can you, I think your teacher wrote a little hairpin. I think that's a good idea to go into, and take as much time as you'd like. Surprise us with that. And 2 and 1. Good. And boom, boom, and 1, and long phrase, and boom, boom, boom. That's good. That's excellent, really. 1. Can you show me, it played a little bit slower so I can hear it melodically? So they're sort of harmonic progression. They're all deceptive cadences to this, and this to this to this. this to this, and now to this, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Good shaping. Yes, all of this was excellent. I like very much the way that you shape these harmonies here. And it's not indicated to do those kinds of specific things, but it was very smartly done. Okay, thank you. The reason why I was asking you to listen for this to this, then to this, and then bottom, and then, is so that it doesn't begin to sound like a technical passage. You want to hear these outlining the harmony here, then to this, and then this, and then, so you understood all the dramatic aspects of the part coming after that, maybe just a little bit more awareness of the harmonies as you go through that. What's unusual about this passage here? What key are we in? And then what key do we go to? E major, without any preparation. You know, so we're here, and then all of a sudden, so if somebody in the audience doesn't have perfect pitch, they don't know that that's an unusual key relationship. What can you do to make them aware that something unusual has just happened?
Be more like kind of playful and surprising when I come in the E major.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the change of sound can be one way of doing it. I also think maybe just some time taking, you know, so that you're in, and I wouldn't then, because it sounds so certain. But if you sort of start, we still don't know where we are. A major, which isn't any better, it's more surprising. So it could be just slightly slower, more tentative, and you can kind of play around with the rhythm a little bit. I think that would be permissible. Can you do the still not certain what key we're supposed to be in. A major. And all of this, we've been in sharp keys. Now we're going to go to flat here, and now we're back. Then good. That's it. All right. And then we're back to home base. So when you, I think anything in sharp keys, I think of a brighter sound. So maybe, you know, and but then when you have these all. So what you're doing is you're trying to show the listener all the mysteries of those key relationships. They're not going to know theoretically what that's all about. But you can show that surprise to us with your colors and with your kind of sound your sound choices, and then also taking time, I think, to help create that. When you get to the very end of it, again, this sort of yum bum 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 yum bum bum bum. I mean, it's kind of funny to have those dissonants, you know. So I think you could want to make the most of it. Can you show me the? To this and then bum bum and jump. Good. So it has more a full orchestral kind of feeling at the end. It's all very well done. You have really excellent facility. I would just make sure that the fast notes don't sound like fast notes. They're always melodic, and so you can give good melodic direction. You already have a really good awareness of what's in the score, which I appreciate very much. But again, you know, when you play loud and when you play soft, what kind of loud do you want to play? What kind of soft do you want to play? How can you color those differences a little bit more? So thinking about, would I want more right hand? Would I want more left hand? Is it a sharp key? Is it a flat key? Minor key, major key? All of those things can help you provide greater variety in the sounds. Okay? All right. Thank you. very well played. I like the, I don't want to say that I like the tempo necessarily, but I thought it was a good tempo. And the reason I don't it's not like I don't think there's like a magic tempo for every piece. And you know, lots of people can make lots of different kinds of tempos work, but this tempo seemed to work for you. And I liked the movement of it very much. And so sometimes when I hear people play it, it gets a little bit, you know, and of course he writes it in two. So 1 and 2, and 1 and 2. And then he's got this lilt. So that creates a sort of a gentle momentum on its own, and so I thought you carried that off really very nicely. It was a little bit hard for me to hear the lilting aspect of it. Your tops are really beautiful. It was just sometimes that I didn't hear enough of the supportive stuff, and maybe, I don't know, and he actually writes little, this is a Henley, no. Oh, this is the Escher. Okay, so he writes accents. I don't necessarily think they're loud, but maybe you could give me a little bit more awareness of it. From the audience I could hear, but I didn't really hear this.
Okay, yeah.
And can we try that?
Yeah.
It's good. Now, make me aware of the bass without heaviness. Phrase stays open, and then finally closes here. So when you just keep it open, one more time. I like you're elongating the T. If you're going to do that, though, make me aware that it feels like it's a cadence. And stay open. Nicely done. When you that's a beautiful, all he does is just add the seventh. So if you could sneak it in a little bit. Okay. Maybe just the end. Yeah, it's a little bit can you smoothen out the stay close to the keys? That's good. Yeah, but can you do it without an accent? It's like you're blending that sound. Come from the harmony that you are in. note how he groups it. 2 notes, then 4 notes. Then 2 note, 4 note going, then 8 and 2. I think it's very specific groupings. So if you can help me find this, and then go to this, and then to this, and then I think if you would group them, then to this, then to, so they don't sound, right, not so square. From the 2 notes, then 4 group. 1 and 2. Yeah, make sure that when you, I think you could still shape and then to here and then now to cadence to 8. Yeah, I wouldn't cadence loud. Yeah, and then to 1, and then arrive at that fortissimo there. 2, 1, and then to this, go to this, and then to this, and 1, then. Yeah, it's interesting the way that Chopin rising, and then 1, 2. He actually slurs to the first 16th, and then he slurs to the second 16th, and why does he do that? I think harmonically, we should go here, but it's a deceptive cadence, right? So that I think, and then. So a little bit more tender in that moment. And he writes tenuto, I think you can take your time through here. Maybe right on the... sensitive to this. That's nice. And then we finish. It's good. So you're doing all the 6 with thumbs, are you?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever tried the 2-1? Those are Chopin's fingering, so 5, 2, 1, 4, then 1. If your hand is big enough to do it, the reason I'm suggesting that is because in order to make it legato, you're using the pedal,
Right.
which is a reasonable thing to do, except that he writes staccatos in the left hand. And then slurs, short, and then slurs, short, and then. So I think it's actually. So it's a kind of a more playful kind of feel to so we won't necessarily change your fingering right at the moment, but you might consider it. But for now, would you even without the legato fingering, could you That's it. And then new key area. I think that can work, and it's nice to have that change. Of course, if you have 2 different key areas, the 5, 7, F sharp to the B, G sharp, bum to the C, bum ba da da da, and then what would you do harmonically? I mean, to color that dynamically, what would you do? Would you do anything different?
I think it's probably growing.
Yeah. And so, you know, maybe keep it. Then bum 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 and then you do the piano well, but what's the character that you're thinking of? The forte and then the piano.
The forte is like almost like overly exuberant.
Okay.
The piano is like it's ashamed of itself and it pulls back.
All right, it's tempered in its excitement. So, can you do a little bit more with your coloring? I'll just say that, and let's see what you come up with.
Just that part.
Right, on it. Yes, I think that could work, except maybe I wouldn't, you kind of, and then, I think I would just keep it more plain. Yes, but you're getting softer, but it doesn't actually sound more relaxed.
Oh, okay.
So I think tempo might be a way. Also maybe a thinner pedal. You kind of sorry. Half pedals, maybe more frequent changes. Good. And in that figure, what's melodic?
It's like there's a chord going up.
Yeah. I think I want to be able to hear tops. Yes, I think if you don't miss notes, you could use fewer pedal changes. Do you change each one? Or where are you changing?
Yeah, I'm changing like every two.
Okay. And change. I think that could work. Could you make it more full though? Really fill in the sounds? That's it. I think it's just making sure that you have good sound in both hands. Right. Good. And then good. Now, we talked about this, I think I've said this a few times, about this two shorts and a long kind of phrase. So 1 and 2, the first and then do, and the second short. Now da dee da ba 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 ba. It's twice as long, right? So 1 bar, and then 2. And each bar has a crescendo. It seems to restart crescendo, another restart crescendo, and then finally fortissimo. What would happen if? I think what happens is all the crescendos are the same. Could the first crescendo not be so big? The second crescendo could be a little bit more, and then the third crescendo, which is going to go on for 2 bars, is longer. So that we don't reach the same It seems like we're kind of hitting a wall and we come back again. Let's see what we can do with layers. First, and the second, and now going on to. Yes, and make sure that we have the melody and. Right, just making sure that that comes through. One more time, and so each. And then. Very melodic on top. So when you have these chords, I want to make sure that we hear it melodically. And so you want to make sure the octave comes through and not in a, yes, it's got, you know, sort of a conforto, but you can drop on each one and not make them sound separate from each other. Can we try that? Yes, good. Now in here, because it's so live, bum, bum. If you pedal right away, you catch stuff, and then, so really listen for it to clear, and then put your foot down, and then you can keep going with that.
Okay.
One more time from, what is that? And I would keep the pedal. From here, and then be-dum, 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 and be-dum, be-dum, up, up, and then keep. For the whole bar. Then, up, 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 keep. I like that the sound is good. Could you play it just a shade slower? Yaddy body daddy body yaddy body bum. I think you are grouping them in that unit, but can you do it more melodically? I hear it rhythmically correctly. Yaddy body 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 daddy daddy body body daddy dum. More melodic there. And those harmony changes when you they sound a little. Can you keep it more linear? I think it's the attack is a little bit too rhythmic. Saying the keys a little bit longer, it's not as rhythmic attack. Good. The four phrase gestures that are very similar to each other, and you're playing them kind of with the same rubato. It's a nice rubato, but it's just repeated 4 times. So maybe so I try to put 2 and 2 together. And then the first 2 are together, the second is a variation of the first. And so what you do with the first one would then tell you what to do with the second one in terms of time taking. So I'm trying not to stop as many times. And then 2, 1, and then 2, and then sorry, and then 2. And maybe progressively softer, or and then another layer. Yes, and maybe not dropping, you get soft so soon. Could you? So I'm going into the first one and away from the second one. I know I'm micromanaging you,
That's okay.
but I kind of want to be able to get that as one gesture.
Yeah.
So I think what you want to do is be careful that when you use rubato, that it doesn't sectionalize things.
Right.
And if you use too many of the same rubatos and the same stops and starts, then it kind of segments ideas. And there's a constancy of rhythm. This piece hardly ever stops. So if you use the 16ths underneath it, maybe that might be a way of listening for it. But I also think that and then that I had B's and now have G's. A little slightly lower, and maybe it's a different kind of feeling. This seems more open and more ecstatic. I think it's coming. And then this seems a little more shy. So I was trying to do a retard in that way, whereas you did this, and with 4 different stops. But if I keep the same tempo going and do a diminuendo, it achieves the same effect of relaxing, but we don't stop the tempo so much.
Yeah.
One more time for the legatissimo. I was kind of, again, micromanaging your retard.
It's okay.
But if a conductor, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, I think that we should pretend we're conducting.
Okay, yeah.
And because if you do ya-da-da-da, it's going to be hard for anybody in the orchestra to kind of follow the beat.
Yeah.
And so I think it sounds most natural when it's more organic. And I'm always counting underneath. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, right? Can you show me that?
Where?
2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, and lilt and 1. Good. And in your arm, if you can physically translate the musical lilt rather than sitting, then I think it makes it heavy. But 1, 2, and be, and be, and be. Try. 2, 1. Good. Chopin was purposeful, I want to say he was. He didn't slur it the same way. This doesn't go here, and then do. Now he writes a new slur. And then do. It's a very small difference, but why not do something different the second time around? So use that. I always look at things and I say, well, he wrote it that way one time. What's changed and why does he do it? And does that make me do something different? I think he's trying to tell me something. Can we try that? So maybe take it. That's it. nicely done. Now, why does he write dots on the last notes?
I mean, he doesn't want it to be too
Yeah,
stuck.
too legato, yeah. And it takes time. I didn't notice you doing staccato. Anyway. And it's partly your foot, because if the pedal's too deep, even if you do a staccato, it sounds like it's legato. So a thinner pedal, and then articulate. Yeah, it doesn't have to be too. Rallentando, I don't think is as an extreme slowing down. So I think kind of simple rather than drawing it out. That seems a little too elongated.
Okay.
And one more time. Nice. And then just wait. Nice. All right, very nicely done. You play beautifully, and you have a good sense of the music. I think you could be a little bit more subtle in your touches, your attacks, to create some of these more legato kinds of sounds.
Okay.
And, really look at the score, looking at the groupings. He has he's micromanaging a lot of the groupings in his 16th, and so he's trying to give you, where it's more small units, which make it more exciting, and then when you have the long slurs, it makes it more expansive. And that kind of helps us create different feelings of musical direction in it. And then when you have all of these sort of similar passages, just take care not to do similar rubato, because then it sort of segments things.
Yeah.
And you can understand the groupings as he writes them, but I think you can sort of combine them into larger gestures as well.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.